All right, we are live. We are live, and today we had to change our position or change our location because environment is so important. Environment is really important. You want beauty. You want beauty around you. You want to be, in a place where plants, light, some texture. You want plant. You want lights. You want texture. You want some beauty. You want some beauty. You want some beautiful people. You want people who are giving, people who are engaged, people who are open. So let's go. What are we looking into? We're looking into, tell me more about the morality, poetry, and music of ancient India. I picked up this book called The Argumentative Indian from Mela, from a fair in India, super cheap, 200 rupees, and it's a very interesting book. There are a lot of fancy stuff happening, and it would be very cool. It would be very cool to sometimes go deep down into these rabbit holes, read these books, and figure out that okay, um, yeah, what are some things where you read these books and now you're really curious and now you're gonna go deeper. So I think it's interesting. It's kind of using these books as everything is meditation, right? It's all a cycle. Just keep the cycle going where you are reading a book, you are reading an interesting text. This thing is talking about Georges Ifra quotes a medieval Arab poet from Baghdad called Al-Sabadi, who said that there were three things on which Indian nation prided itself: its method of reckoning, the game of chess, and the book titled Kalila wa Dimna, a collection of legends and fables. This is not altogether a different list from Voltaire's catalogue of the important things to come from India: our numbers, our backgammon, our chess, our first principle geometry, and the fables which have become our own. These selections would not fit the mainstream Western image of Indian traditions focused on religion or spirituality, nor would they fit the way many Indians perceive themselves and their intellectual past, especially those who have come to take a separatist position on the nature of Indian culture. I have tried to discuss how that disparity has come about and how it's sustained. I have also tried to speculate about how the selective alienation of India from a very substantial part of its past has been nourished by the asymmetrical relationship between India and the West. It is oddly enough the rationalist part of India's tradition that has been affected most by this dialectical alienation. Alienation? What is this thing talking about? Indian traditions and the Western imagination. Very interesting. We'll come back to this. Okay. Let's look what Claude has for us. Morality, poetry, and music into a single fabric. Tell me more about the legends and fables of ancient India. This one is also interesting. Alright. Treating them less as separate domains than in interlocking ways of ordering human life and aligning it with cosmic order. On morality, the central concept is dharma, a notion broader than the English morality. Duty, righteousness, cosmic law, and the right ordering of society and self. Encompassing duty, righteousness, cosmic law, and the right ordering of society and self, the Dharma Shastra, notably the Manusmriti, the great epics Mahabharata and Ramayana, the Buddhist and Jain ethical traditions all explored how one ought to act. The right ordering of society and self, the Dharma Shastra, the great epics, Buddhist and Jain ethical traditions all explored how one ought to act. The Mahabharata in particular treats dharma as genuinely difficult. Its characters face situations where competing duties collide, and the text often refuses easy answers. Observing dharma is subtle, sukshma. Concepts like karma, action and its consequences, ahimsa, non-harm, especially emphasized by Jains and Buddhists. Four aims of life: purushastra, dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. Dharma, arth, kam, moksha. Structured ethical reflection. Duty, meaning, work. What are these? Duty, meaning, work, and transcendence. Indian thinkers did not believe that humans should pursue only spirituality or only wealth. Instead, they argue that a flourishing life balances four aims. Dharma is duty, ethics, responsibility, and living in harmony with the world. It asks, what is the right thing to do? What responsibilities do I have? How should I conduct myself? Dharma is duty, ethics, responsibility, and living in harmony with the world. It asks, what is the right thing to do? What responsibilities do I have? How should I conduct myself? Examples: keeping your word, caring for family, acting with integrity in business, contributing to society. The heroes of the Mahabharata constantly wrestle with competing dharmas, which is why the epic is full of moral dilemmas. Earth, prosperity, and achievement. Earth means material well being. Earth means material well being, wealth, power, influence, and the resources needed to live effectively. It includes building a business, earning money, developing skills, creating institutions, political leadership. Ancient India did not see wealth as inherently corrupt. Wealth pursued ethically was considered legitimate goal. Legitimate goal for someone building companies, creating art, or pursuing ambitious projects. Much of that effort falls under earth. Building a business, earning money, developing skills, creating institutions, political leadership. Building a business, earning money, developing skills, creating institutions, political leadership. Calm, pleasure, and beauty. Calm refers to enjoyment, love, beauty, art, music, romance, and sensory delight. It includes love, friendship, poetry, music, good food, aesthetic appreciation. Oh my god, four aims of life. I love this. People have already figured shit out. I don't know why we are duplicating the efforts. Why are we trying to duplicate the efforts and find what is the meaning of life? Yeah, four aims of life: calm, pleasure, and beauty. Enjoyment, love, beauty, art, music, romance, sensory delight. It includes love, friendship. Enjoyment, love, beauty, art, music, romance, sensory delight. It includes love, friendship, poetry, music, good food, aesthetic appreciation. Ancient Indian civilization produced sophisticated theories of aesthetics because calm was considered a valid human aim, not merely distraction. Ancient Indian civilization produced sophisticated theories of aesthetics because calm was considered a valid human aim, not merely distraction. The classical Sanskrit poet Kalidas is a great example of the celebration of beauty and emotion. Find me poems in Hindi of Kalidas where he's talking about beauty and emotion. Oh, what? Transcript was cancelled? find me Hindi poems of Kalidas where he's talking about beauty and emotion. Kalidas, good food, aesthetic appreciation. Kalidas was classical Sanskrit poet and Ramadas, not a Hindi poet. He wrote in Sanskrit, heavily with beauty and emotion. Meghdutak, the cloud messenger. Lyric poem was separated lovers' longing. Samhara, the gathering of seasons, rich with descriptions of natural beauty and romantic mood. His plays like Abhi Janan Sakuntalam. Abhijanan Sakuntalam. Wow. Abhijanan Sakuntalam. Recognition of Shakuntala. So if you are after beauty and emotion, those Sanskrit works are exactly the right place, but they are in Hindi. I can discuss these works, their themes, and the style. I can reproduce long copyrighted translations verbatim. Why is it so afraid? Why are you so afraid, Claude? Why are you so afraid? It includes love, friendship. Just give me links, even if it's not. Yeah, just give me links. Even if you don't think you can produce, then just give me links. It includes love, friendship, poetry, music, good food, aesthetic appreciation. Ancient civilization produced sophisticated theories of aesthetics because calm was considered a valid human aim, not merely a distraction. The classical Sanskrit poet Kalidas is a great example of the celebration of beauty and emotion. Moksha, liberation. Moksha is spiritual freedom. It asks, who am I beneath all roles? Spiritual freedom. Who am I beneath all roles? What remains when desires, fears, and ambitions fall away? Can consciousness be free from suffering? The Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita explore this deeply. Moksha is often described as awakening to one's true nature beyond ego and attachment. Moksha is often described as awakening to one's true nature beyond ego and attachment. The elegant part, the Purusharthas, are not a ladder where you finish one and move to the next. They are more like four instruments in an orchestra. Dharma keeps the music ethical. Earth provides the means and capability. Dharma keeps the music ethical. Earth provides the means and capability. Calm makes life beautiful and worth living. Moksha reminds you that none of the other three are the ultimate destination. Wow. Spiritual freedom. It asks, who am I beneath all roles? What remains when desires, fears, and ambitions fall away? Desires, fears, and ambitions fall away. Can consciousness be free from suffering? The Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita explore this deeply. Moksha is often described as awakening to one's true nature beyond ego and attachment. Dharma is duty, ethics, responsibility, and living in harmony with the world. It asks, what is the right thing to do? What responsibilities do I have? How should I conduct myself? Keeping your word, caring for family, acting with integrity in business, contributing to society. The heroes of Mahabharata constantly wrestle with competing dharmas, which is why the epic is full of moral dilemmas. Earth, prosperity and achievement. Earth means material well-being, wealth, power, influence, and the resources needed to live effectively. It includes building a business, earning money, developing skills, creating institutions, political leadership. Ancient India did not see wealth as inherently corrupt. A life with only earth can become greed. A life with only calm can become indulgence. A life with only dharma can become rigid duty. A life with only moksha can neglect worldly responsibilities. The classical Indian ideal was balance. Dharma, arth, kam. Dharma, arth, kam, moksha. 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 Wow. Poetry and morality was deliberately joined. The theory of Kavya held that literature should give both pleasure and instruction. Literature should give both pleasure and instruction. The aesthetic core was Ras theory, articulated. Oh, music is getting too loud. Let me. Alright. Poetry and morality were deliberately joined. The theory of Kavya held that literature should give both pleasure and instruction. The aesthetic core was Ras theory, articulated in Bharata's Natya Shastra and refined later by thinkers like Abhinav Gupta. A poem or play evokes emotional flavors. The erotic, the heroic, the compassionate, the peaceful in others, that the cultivated audience savors. Sanskrit poets like Kalidas, Bhas, and Bhartrihari produced work prized for its sound, suggestion, dhwani, and moral resonance. The Subhashita tradition, pithy moral epigrams made ethics memorable and quotable. The aesthetic core was Ras theory, articulated in Bharata's Natya Shastra and refined later by thinkers like Abhinav Gupta. A poem or play evokes emotional flavors. The erotic, the heroic, the compassionate, the peaceful in others, the cultivated audience savors. A poem or play evokes emotional flavors. A poem or play evokes emotional flavors. The erotic, the heroic, the compassionate, the peaceful, and others. That the cultivated audience savors. Sanskrit poets like Kalidas, Bhas, and Bhartrihari produced work prized for its sound suggestion and moral resonance. The Subhashita tradition, pithy moral epigrams made ethics memorable and quotable. Music similarly was understood as more than environment and than entertainment. Music similarly was understood as more than entertainment. The same way, this is essentially the Vedic hymns set to melody, making chant central to ritual from the earliest period. The Natya Shastra and later texts theorize the relationship between sound, scale, and emotion and music came to be seen as a spiritual discipline, a path capable of inducing devotion and even liberation. The idea of Nad Brahma, sound as the absolute. Performance united poetry, music, and gesture in drama, so the three arts were experienced together rather than apart. Music similarly was understood as more than entertainment. The same way, this is essentially the Vedic hymns set to melody, making chant central to ritual from the earliest period. Natya Shastra and later texts theorize the relationship between sound, scale, and emotion, and music came to be seen as spiritual discipline. The path capable of inducing devotion, even liberation, the idea of Nada Brahma, sound as the absolute. Performance united music, poetry, and gesture and drama. So the three arts were experienced together rather than apart. If you tell me which strands interest you, the philosophy of Dharma, Ras, aesthetics, the Vedic chant tradition. Three more of the legends and fables mentioned in here. Producing one of the world's richest tradition of legend and fable, ranging from cosmic myth to clever animal tales, and many of these stories travel far beyond India to shape storytelling across Asia and Europe. The great epics anchor the legendary tradition. The Mahabharata, the longest epic poem in the world, tells of the dynastic struggle between the Pandava and Kauravas, culminating in the catastrophic war at Kurukshetra. Embedded with it is the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's discourse to Arjuna on duty and action. The Ramayana recounts the story of Ram. Okay, I'm also curious. Tell me the relationship between entropy and extropy with life philosophy. Let's see. Entropy and extropy. Extropy. I don't know if that's a word, but we used that yesterday. Krishna's discourse to Arjuna on duty and action. The Ramayana recounts the story of Ram, his wife Sita's abduction by the demon king Ravan, and her rescue with the help of the monkey god Hanuman. Simultaneously, adventure, theology, and moral instruction. The characters became cultural touchstones. What is theology? Let's see. What is theology? Study of God, religious beliefs, and the nature of faith. The word comes from the Greek words theos, God, and logos, study or reasoning. Questions such as who is God, what is the purpose of human life, what do sacred texts teach, how do concepts like salvation, morality, and the afterlife work, how should people live according to their faith. Systematic theology, organizing religious teachings into a coherent system. Biblical theology, studying the teachings of sacred scriptures. Historical theology, examining how religious beliefs developed over time. Moral theology, applying religious principles to human behavior. Practical theology, focusing on ministry, worship, and religious practice. The great epics anchor the legendary tradition. The Puranas preserve the vast body of Hindu mythology, creation, dissolution of the cosmos, genealogies of gods and kings, and the deeds of deities like Vishnu in his 10 avatars, Shiva and the goddess in her many forms. Creation, dissolution of the cosmos, genealogies of gods and kings, and the deeds of deities like Vishnu and his 10 avatars, Shiva and the goddess in her many forms. Stories such as the churning of the ocean of milk, Samundra Manthan, in which gods and demons together churn the cosmic ocean to produce the nectar of immortality, belong to this layer. In which gods and demons together churn the cosmic ocean to produce the nectar of immortality, belong to this layer. The fable tradition is distinct and especially influential. The Panchatantra, attributed to Vishnu Sharma and likely composed in the early centuries, collection of interlinked animal fables framed as instruction in niti, worldly wisdom and statecraft, for young princes. Its talking jackals, lions, crows, and tortoises illustrate practical lessons about friendship, prudence, and political cunning. The book was translated into Middle Persian, then Arabic as Kalila Vadimna, and onward into Greek, Hebrew, Latin, and most European languages, making one of the most widely circulated secular books in history. They influenced Aesopic collections, the fables of La Fontaine, and beyond. Related collections include the Hitopadesha, a later Sanskrit fable anthology drawing on the Panchatantra, and the Jataka tales. Hundreds of Buddhist stories recounting the Buddha's previous births, often as an animal or virtuous figure. Generosity or patience. Ocean of the streams of stories, a massive 11th century compendium of folk tales, romances, and marvels. While the Vetala tales, Betel Pachisi, is in which a corpse dwelling spirit poses riddling moral dilemmas to a king, blend the supernatural with ethical puzzles. What unites these traditions is the frame story technique, stories nested within stories, and the consistent fusion of entertainment with instruction, whether the lesson is spiritual liberation, royal statecraft, or everyday prudence. Let's ask Grok. Create me an entire graph of, starting with Panchatantra, every other scripture and every other creative scripture that was created using that as an inspiration. So basically, build a graph, which is a creative genealogy, starting with Panchtantra. I really enjoy these ones, so let's see. We've the closing line from an earlier message, which offered four threads. Ras aesthetics is the heart of classical Indian literary and dramatic theory, and begins with a single arresting claim: the purpose of art is to produce a savourable emotional experience. The purpose of art is to produce a savourable emotional experience. The word ras literally means juice, sap, or flavor. Ras, leela, ras. Ras aesthetics is the heart of classical Indian literary and dramatic theory, and begins with a single arresting claim: the purpose of art is to produce a savourable emotional experience. The word ras literally means juice, sap, flavor, the taste of a ripe fruit, and the theory asks how a poem or play can let an audience taste emotion the way tongue tastes sweetness. This is very interesting. I believe for someone to taste this emotion, they have to be open to feelings. If they are too rigid, it's very hard for them to crack open and taste those feelings or emotions. Oh, we have so many questions in line. Can let an audience taste emotion the way tongue tastes sweetness. The foundational text is the Natya Shastra, attributed to Bharat and usually dated to somewhere between the 2nd century BC and 2nd century CE. It is a vast treatise on drama covering acting, dance, music, stagecraft, and theory, but its most influential give me key insights of stagecraft from ancient India. Fascinating because it was not merely about putting on a show. The goal was to create the condition under which ras could arise, allowing the audience to taste emotion. The purpose of theatre was transformation on realism. Unlike much modern theatre, which often aims to imitate reality, ancient Indian drama aimed to evoke a distilled emotional essence. A stage was not judged by how realistically it depicted a palace or forest. It was judged by whether it generated love, shringar, heroism, veera, wonder, adbhut, peace, shant, and other ras. The audience was meant to leave elevated, refined, and emotionally expanded. The audience was meant to leave elevated, refined, and emotionally expanded. Every element served emotion. Nothing on stage was accidental. Ancient theorists viewed performance as an orchestra of speech, music, dance, gesture, costume, makeup, scenery. Speech, music, dance, gesture, costume, makeup, scenery. Each element reinforced the emotional atmosphere. A moonlit scene wasn't there because the story happened at night. It was there because moonlit amplifies romantic ras. It's very interesting. There's this idea of what's a good friend. A good friend is someone who is. What's a good friend? A good friend is someone who is. By the way, we found these two flowers. Very cool. A good friend is someone who speaks their mind, so you can actually have good conversations with them, and they also are a little fascinated by you. That's a massive thing. That makes a massive difference. Ancient theorists viewed performance as an orchestra. Each element reinforced the emotional atmosphere. Moonlit scene wasn't there because the story happened at night. It was there because moonlit amplifies romantic ras. Speech, music, dance, gesture, costume, makeup, scenery. Nothing was accidental. Gesture was a language. Indian actors learned an incredibly sophisticated vocabulary of movement. A slight turn of the wrist, glance of the eye, or tilt of the neck could communicate desire, fear, jealousy, reverence, courage. desire, fear, jealousy, reverence, courage. The body became a symbolic language that survives today in classical dance forms such as Bharatanatyam, Kathak, and Odissi. Suggestion is more powerful than display. Ancient Indian stagecraft preferred implication over explicitness. Major events often happen offstage: battles, deaths, murders, catastrophes. The audience imagined them. 20. Implied can be more powerful than what is shown. Modern filmmaker might show the explosion. Ancient dramatists might show a messenger returning from a battlefield, covered in dust, unable to speak. The audience was part of the performance. The performance was not complete without a receptive audience. The ideal spectator was called a sahitya. I think this is also very interesting. You have to learn the rules before you start breaking the rules. So it's very important to study what has already happened. The ideal spectator was called as sahitya, the one with a shared heart. The audience was expected to participate emotionally and imaginatively. A rigid or distracted viewer could miss the entire experience. A rigid or distracted viewer could miss the entire experience. One with a shared heart. The performance was not complete without a receptive audience. The audience was part of the performance. The performance was not complete without a receptive audience. Exactly. The audience also has to be receptive. The audience has to be part of the performance. One with a shared heart. Emotionally and imaginatively. A rigid or distracted viewer could miss the entire experience. This aligns closely with insight you were discussing earlier. Emotional openness is not optional. It is half the art. Music was structural, not decorative. Music prepared emotions. Dialogue articulated them. Gesture embodied them. All three worked together. The stage was a model of the cosmos. One of the most remarkable ideas is the drama itself was considered sacred. Fifth wave, accessible to everyone. Human passion, small dilemmas, divine forces, cosmic order could all be explored safely. Great art balances pleasure and wisdom. Ancient Indian thinkers rejected the idea that art must choose between entertainment and instruction. The highest drama achieved both delight, insight. Great art balances pleasure and wisdom. Ancient Indian thinkers rejected the idea that art must choose between entertainment and instruction. The highest drama achieved both delight, insight. The audience enjoys the story while unconsciously absorbing deeper truths about love, duty, power, loss, and liberation. Ancient Indian thinkers rejected the idea that art must choose between entertainment and instruction, unconsciously absorbing deeper truths about love, duty, power, loss, and liberation. For someone like you, building a live streams podcast media experience is perhaps the most transformative lesson is this. Ancient stagecraft was obsessed with designing emotional states rather than delivering information. Designing emotional states. Modern creators often ask, what should I say? And Atisha, what should the audience feel? Start with the emotion. What should they feel? Influential passage, the Ras Sutra, compact formula stating that Ras arises from the conjunction of the three things: the Vibhav, situation, cause, or stimulants of emotion. The hero, the beloved, the moonlight god, and the Anubhav, the Vibhav, situation, cause, stimulants of emotion. The Anubhav, visible effects or reactions. Trigger, effect, reaction. Anubhav, glance, trembling, tears, and the Vyabhi Charibhav, the transient accompanying feelings, anxiety, joy, jealousy. The transient accompanying feelings, the visible effects or reactions. The visible effects, oh wow, so beautiful. Vibhav, Anubhav, and the transient accompanying feeling, anxiety, joy, jealousy. When these combine and act upon a latent, permanent emotion in the spectator, that emotion is transmuted into ras. Bhav and ras. A bhav is an ordinary emotion, love, grief, anger, as it exists in life or in the character on stage. Ras is not that emotion raw, but its aestheticized form, savored at a contemplative distance. The grief you feel at a real funeral is painful. The grief you savor in a tragic play, Karuna Ras, the compassionate, is pleasurable. This points to the crucial distinction between bhav and ras. A bhav is an ordinary emotion, love, grief, anger, as it exists in life or in the character on stage. Ras is not that emotion, raw, but its aestheticized form, savored at a contemplative distance. The grief you feel at a real funeral is painful. The grief you savor in a tragic play, Karuna Ras, the compassionate, is pleasurable. Explaining how something built from sorrow becomes delightful is the central puzzle the tradition kept returning to. How something built from sorrow becomes delightful is the central puzzle. Bharat enumerated 8 ras, each paired with an underlying stable emotion. Sthyayi bhav, Shringar, the erotic or romantic, Hasya, the comic from amusement, the erotic or romantic from love, Hasya, the comic, Karuna, the compassionate or tragic from sorrow, Shringar, the erotic or romantic from love, Hasya, the comic from amusement, Karuna, the compassionate or tragic from sorrow, Rodra, the furious, Rudra, the furious from anger, Veera, the heroic from energy determination, Shringar, erotic romantic, Hasya, comic, Karuna, compassionate or tragic, Karuna, Rudra, the furious, Veera, the heroic, Bhayanak, the terrifying, Bibhast, disgusting from revulsion, Adbhut, wondrous from astonishment, ninth, Shant, spiritual liberation. At a later, vigorously debated since critics asked how the very quieting of emotion could itself be an emotional flavor. Mystical apex. The theory grew far more sophisticated through later commentators of a wall in Kashmir, Anandavardhana in the 9th century. Dhwanilok advanced the theory of dhvani, poetic suggestion. Highest poetry works not by what it states directly, but by what it suggests. Meaning resonates beyond the literal words, like the lingering tone of a bell, and ras is communicated through the suggestive power rather than asserted outright. A poem that names an emotion is weaker than one that makes you feel it through implication. A poem that names an emotion is weaker than one that makes you feel it through implication. Abhinav Gupta, around the turn of the 11th century, synthesized the tradition in his great commentaries, the Abhinav Bharati on Bharat and the Lokana on Anandavardhana, drawing on his background in Kashmir's Shaiva philosophy. He gave the deepest answer to the puzzle of aesthetic pleasure. For Abhinav Gupta, the relishing of ras depends on the spectator being a Saharidaya, a person of shared heart, sensitive and cultivated. In aesthetic experience, personal ego and practical concerns fall away. In aesthetic experience, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, dharma, artha, duty, money, beauty. Duty, money, beauty, and liberation. Duty, money, beauty, and liberation. Your goal is to make your work such that it adds all of them. So what are we doing with streaming? So with streaming, We have duty every single day. We are coming, we are entering into flow state. There is money. Yes, we are constantly looking for ways how to make this sustainable. Then you have calm, which is beauty. There is beauty in this. There is beauty in flow state. You are searching for places with aesthetic experience, and then finally you have aesthetics, good aesthetics, and finally you have spirituality. So we are also doing all the, we're also doing all the, what do we say? Upanishads. We are doing the spiritual stuff. So that's also interesting. All right, let's see. Kashmiri Shema philosophy. Hone latent emotional dispositions, vasana, are awakened in generalized, depersonalized form. In generalized, depersonalized form. Sadharanikarana, universalization. Sadharanikarana. So the love or grief tasted is no longer mine or his, but emotion as such. This experience, you argue, is a kind of repose on consciousness itself, structurally akin to the bliss of spiritual realization, which is why Ras could be called the twin of the tasting of Brahman. A few threads make the system distinctive. The notion of universalization explains how we can be moved by characters whose particular circumstances are nothing like ours. The contemplative distance, what later Western aesthetics would discuss as aesthetic distance. How painful emotions become enjoyable in art, and the integration with metaphysics meant that, in its mature form, aesthetics was never merely about pleasure. The savoring of beauty was understood as a refined echo of the soul's deepest peace. The framework was not confined to theatre and poetry. It became the shared vocabulary of Indian classical music and dance, where particular rag and movements are still spoken of as evoking specific ras, and it remains the lens through which much Indian art is appreciated today. If you would like, I can go further into any of these. Abhinav Gupta's theory of universalization, the Dhwani theory of suggestion, the debate over Shant Ras, how Ras maps onto Indian music and dance. Okay, first we'll look into this one, and then we'll look into entropy and extropy, which is something we dived into yesterday with Balaji. It's a sharp observation, lands right on something the Ras tradition itself insisted. The capacity to taste Ras was never assumed to be universal automatic. It was understood as the quality of the receiver, not just the artwork. It's exactly what the term Sahrideya captures. It literally means one with heart, or more evocatively, one of shared heart. The ideal spectator or reader who has the sensitivity to resonate with what a poem or play offers. This is exactly what the term Sahrideya captures. Sensitivity to resonate with what a poem or play offers. The tradition was quite clear that the same drama played before a Sahrideya and before an unreceptive person yields Ras in the first and nothing much in the second. The art supplies the condition. The tasting requires a heart prepared for to be moved. A heart prepared to be moved. A heart prepared to be moved. You are too rigid to crack open as a fair glass of the failure mode with your silent mind. A heart that is prepared to be moved. What the openness actually involves, he spoke of obstacles that block aesthetic experience, and several of them are essentially forms of the rigidity you are describing. If the spectator can let go of their own practical, ego-bound concerns, what does this mean for me? Is this useful? Is this real? They stay locked in the personal and the literal, and the emotion never generalizes into Ras. The savoring depends on a kind of self-forgetting, where personal defenses and preoccupations relax enough for the universalized emotion to come through. A guarded, self-protective, or purely analytical stance keeps the gate shut. A guarded, self-protective, or purely analytical stance keeps the gate shut. A guarded, self-protective, or purely analytical stance keeps the gate shut. There's something worth drawing out in your phrasing, though. Open feelings can sound like mere emotionality, being easily moved, wearing what's hard on one's sleeve, but the Sahitya isn't just small loose emotional tabs. The openness that tradition prizes is more like a cultivated receptivity, a refinement built partly from temperament and partly from exposure and practice. Last are the latent emotional impressions left by past experience are what the artwork awakens. So richer, more examined inner life actually gives the art more to resonate with, or what the artwork awakens. So a richer, more examined inner life, more examined inner life actually gives the art more to resonate with, which means openness and depth go together. It isn't simply that sensitive people feel more, but that they have developed an inner instrument that art can play. Or what the artwork awakens. So richer, more examined inner life actually gives the art more to resonate with, which means openness and depth go together. It isn't simply that sensitive people feel more, but they have developed an inner instrument the art can play. Can you find me more people who are aligned with this? Can you find me more people around the world who are aligned with this that I can talk to, that I can make friends with, that I can work with? Potentially, I can just be around with them. That also complicates that rigid people can't taste it. Pictures in an interesting way. Rigidity isn't always coldness. Sometimes it's a kind of self-protection, a reluctance to be vulnerable to what art might stir up. People near me, I can be around in person or in community. I can join from anywhere, specific interest area to gather around, a way to deepen this on my own first. This also complicates rigid people can't taste a picture in an interesting way. Rigidity isn't always cold, and sometimes it's a kind of self-protection, a reluctance to be vulnerable to what art might stir up. Aesthetic experience asks you to lower your guard and let an emotion move through you that you don't control. For some people, the barrier isn't a lack of feeling, but a fear of it. Cross is a collaboration, the receiver's openness is half of it, where the theory might gently push back is on assuming openness is just a fixed trait some have and others lack. They frame it as something that can be cultivated, an instrument that can be tuned rather than a door that's simply either open or shut. I can't go out and find specific named individuals for you to be friends, and I don't have a way to search and surface real people as contacts. Depth plus openness, asking where they tend to gather. A richly examined inner life paired with willingness to be moved shows up whenever people take inner experience seriously and practice attending it. Who are these people and more? What rooms are they already standing in? A few kinds of rooms tend to consecrate them. Contemplative and meditative communities select art for exactly this. Serious art spaces, not casual consumption, but places where people make or deeply study poetry, music, theater, film. Gather people practiced at being affected and articulate about it. Depth-oriented intellectual settings like philosophy, reading groups. Jungian or depth psychology communities. Some religious mystical traditions prize the examiner life directly. And specific to your thread here, communities around Indian classical music and dance, Sanskrit or comparative aesthetics. Broader study of contemplative traditions are full of people who would recognize the word ras and look up at it. Resonate rather than hoping they live nearby. Practice or body of ideas and the people you are describing are the ones drawn to the depth of it. Let me give you concrete real places should look sorted by how directly they match. podcast, History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps. Bro, you need to start giving me links every time you History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps. Okay. Its comment sections are unnecessary discussion spaces draw exactly the reflective, cross-culturally curious people you would want to meet. One commenter on that very episode picked up the point you raised independently. The aesthetics of Ross. Wow. This is really cool that somebody can actually pull something like that. Okay. Picked up the point you raised independently. The finest art only yields full Ross when meant by a cultivated listener. I think this is it. This is the goal. There is one person who has created this podcast, and then this was published on multiple platforms, like. So one person created this podcast called The History of Philosophy Without Any Gaps, and this was published on multiple platforms, Spotify, YouTube, Reddit, and everything. And now, there's someone who commented on it on Reddit, and but I only have access to the YouTube. Now using Claude, I'm able to today go out and search for everybody who consumed this content, everybody who is talking about something similar to this, everybody who has just like maybe not even commented directly on this content but referred to this content in a different discussion and expanded on the conversation. And now using AI, you can find these people. You can talk to them, you can connect with people, and that is the goal of AI. AI's goal was always to serve people. It's not to serve some sort of complex mechanism or complex like database. You are not building database, you are serving people, and database is a solution to serve people. You go out into this complexity because your goal is to serve people. It's very important to understand these things. Sometimes we forget that, oh, I'm building Bitcoin, I'm working in crypto because because it's complicated, and it's something that must be sacred, or it's something esoteric, and it's supposed to be a separate thing than helping humans. No, you are building everything to help humans. Cross-culturally curious people who want to meet. One commentator on that episode picked up the point you raised independently. Finance chart only yields full RAS when met by a cultivated listener. Philosophy podcast with active communities. This one and others like Philosophize This tend to have Discord servers, subreddits, or Patreon discussion tiers, where the regulars are precisely the depth-oriented type. Those are joinable from anywhere, and low stakes to lurk in first, beyond that specific. Go find me links to the Discord servers and community links. Contemplative meditation communities for discussion culture, not just guides setting amp spaces like Dharma Overground, unusually frank, articulate forum for serious meditators. Streamentary community, online sanghas from tradition like insight meditation tend to attract people who take their own life seriously and can talk about it well. Okay, this looks cool. The practice of awakening. Join. Place for open, friendly, serious discussion related to the practice of meditation or the techniques aimed at developing concentration, increasing the power of conscious awareness, and producing insight, leading to awakening. We try to understand awakening to be a practical and attainable goal that can be from many paths and directions. We welcome all practitioners, including those from Buddhist, secular, or other backgrounds. The understanding of trauma. in awakening literature and discourse seems to be quite lacking. The post-stream entry path. Stream entry. Stream entry. It's been 6 months since I believe I entered the stream. The first 2 months were amazing, which of course is a good word to describe the experience, but it was remarkable in the sense that I had remarkably less suffering, a ton of flow and effortlessness. I felt more present in conversations with friends. I really enjoyed my work and I found myself deeply involved and productive after somewhat of a stagnant period prior. I would work extremely hard but it felt easy. And after an intense day I could switch off quickly, which was hard for me in the past, but slowly I would say this faded. It is not gone, but some identification crept back in, and suffering has rebounded to a degree. I'm not living in the 90% of the time automatic flow mode that I had for the first 2 months. One thing that was probably bad in retrospect is that after stream entry I basically stopped our practice. The novelty wore off and I feel I have become less mindful and some identifications have crept back in. The natural misconception is to assume one needs to wait a journey, try and go get it forever. No, flow state is. The deeper root cause is a clinging to the ornaments of awakening as a real deal. They are not. They are the ornaments, so yes, beautiful and great and everything, but not the action point. We should neither belittle them nor mistake them for the actual awakening. It's like mistaking the icing of the cake for the cake. As much as the icing is a nice thing to eat, it's simply not the cake itself. Meditation must continue to remove expectations from grandiose states of being until all becomes just normal, both the presence and the absence of such states and ornaments, but not because those states are to be rejected, but rather because one has had so many of them that one becomes satisfied in some sense. At some point, the tacit knowledge they do exist is enough. It's typically much more emphasized in Zen than in many other Buddhist schools, for the better or worse. In Theravada, often a big taboo is made around talking of such things as awakening, and that creates unrealistic expectations, so it's problematic to some degree. Many Zen masters have used both poetry or simple language to cut through the expectation of the students post-awakening and bring them back down to earth. Enjoy the ride while it lasts. Don't regret when it's gone. Continue the practice, not to eventually gain anything, but just as an expression of an inner attitude toward the potential of awakening and realization we all have. Eventually we'll land again in such states. You'll undo lots of knots, and at some point there will be some big breakthroughs, after which there is no more felt need to distinguish awakening from non-awakening. Most people never get there, because they cling to the grandiose ideas of grandiose states of being, thus rejecting the ordinariness of it all. Thus they need more practice and also more non-practice. One seem to have very different interpretations of what stream entry entails. I think we need to start pinning Reddit. Reddit needs to be pinned. You probably need to be a monk. Fairly common, it takes a few short years of around 2 hours a day of dedication. Association with people of integrity, listening to the true Dhamma, listening to a live with the appropriate attention, practice in accordance with Dharma, balancing the 5 faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. Progression towards stream entry follows the progress of Insight model. The progress of Insight model is universal. cessation is a blip in experience. There is no experience of cessation. Cessation is the ceasing of fire aggregates. There's still awareness. It doesn't require cessation. There's a glimpse of the unconditioned nibbana. What is this? There's a glimpse of the unconditioned nibbana, seeing dependent origination. It's insight into the three marks of existence. It's a very dramatic experience, very subtle perceptual shift. Drastic and lasting change in people's lives. People's lives remain mostly the same, only with a subtle shift. All we have are interpreters. Once people had reached, they would be able to speak very clearly about what it is. Appear the same way where most importantly maybe is the fact that the stream entry to our head model is just the theory, the model of the positive enlightenment. Extremely wide variations in practice between people. How one person experiences progress on the way to enlightenment will vary widely from another person's experience. At least that's what becomes very easy to see if you take a bird's eye view of all the different discussions. My way is the only correct way and your way is wrong. It doesn't matter. This is not the end. First stage on the path, it's not the end to it. Vary two different models or interpretations of models based on their karma, nature and nurture for the karma averse people. Countless interpretations that are out there, and don't make yourself crazy trying to figure out the true and real stream entry. Mind and body. You begin seeing thoughts, sensations, emotions, awareness, separate processes. Cause and effect. You notice how experiences arise because of conditions. Three characteristics. You deeply perceive impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self arising and passing away. A dramatic stage with heightened clarity, energy, bliss, creativity, or unusual experiences. The dark night. Cluster of stages where experience can feel difficult, empty, frustrating, or disillusioning. Equanimity. Things become balanced, spacious, and effortless. Path and fruition. Resulting in a permanent shift in understanding. Path and fruition. How to manufacture states of mind. It's very interesting. Inside meditation tend to attract people who take their inner life seriously, can talk about it well. Depth psychology spaces, especially Jungian ones. Dream work. Jung platform. Various analytical psychology groups. These gathered people committed to examine inner life almost by definition. Substack and the essay world be the most underrated answer. A lot of the people you're describing have migrated to writing and reading personal but rigorous essays on meaning, art, consciousness, and inner experience. Following a few writers in that way and participating in their common sections is one of the most natural ways to find individuals. Letterboxes, use art communities, if film, music, or poetry is your entry point. People who write thoughtfully about why a film or rock moved them are practicing exactly the articulate receptivity you value. Social film discovery, Letterbox. What is this? Get Furious. Disclosure Day. Wouldn't you like to know, weather girl? Wouldn't you like to know, weather girl? Emily Blunt obviously gives the best performance here, but why is the second best Loki the news anchor at the very end? The guy from Begonia would have allowed. Spielberg knows something the rest of us don't. Find me quotes from Steven Spielberg on the aesthetic experience of movie, of the aesthetic experience of art. Not in the biggest community, look for the smallest active and organizer on something you generally love. You find these people one or two at a time, but recognizing them and how they respond to something, not by joining a group that advertises the trait. Look first, notice who articulate things in a way that resonates and engage with those individuals directly. And now I'm curious about the entropy extropy thing that we're talking about. Yeah, now Claude is starting to feel very verbose. Let's see. Dispersal of energy, loosely or disorder in a system. Heat death scenario in which no usable energy gradients remain. The second law applies to isolated systems. Local pockets can become more ordered as long as they export enough entropy to their surroundings. Taking in energy, releasing entropy to the environment as heat and waste. Organism feeds on negative entropy. Feeds on order. An organism feeds on order. It achieves order by exploiting disorder. Exporting disorder. Local, temporary, energetically funded resistance to the universal slide toward equilibrium. This is now a serious state of science, including work on dissipative structure. Local, temporary, energetically funded resistance to the whole universal slide toward equilibrium. This is now a serious area of science, where we work on dissipative structures. The proposals that life is favored because it efficiently dissipates energy gradients. Extremely different kind of term and deserves a clear flag. Reason, science, and technology to extend life, expand intelligence, and push back against decay, limitation, and death. Physical law with an optimistic philosophical program, not two symmetrical scientific concepts. Creation of meaning against a background of dissolution. Everything tends to disperse, living in, especially conscious beings, carve out islands of order, pattern, and memory. To be alive is to be temporarily and locally anti-entropic, and the work of a life-building relationships, knowledge, art, institutions is the work of generating and sustaining order that the universe does not hand out for free. Generating and sustaining order. This gives a naturalistic grounding to a sense of purpose. Meaning is not found in the cosmos at large, but made at cost in local defiance of the gradient. The second connection is around morality and acceptance. Because the ordering is energetically funded and temporary, death is the eventual reassertion of equilibrium. The organism can no longer pay the entropic bill. Some find in this stoic or naturalistic equanimity. Decline and death are not failures or injustices, but the same law that made the ordering possible in the first place. The very gradient that lets life exist also guarantees its end. Pushes in the opposite direction and is worth weighing critically. It treats decay and death less a secondary boundary than an enduring problem, something reason and technology might indefinitely postpone. Lend a borrowed scientific authority to what is at bottom a value-laden wager about the future. Is a live philosophical disagreement rather than something physics settles. Entropy as disorder is already a simplification. Order is a fuzzy policy, sliding from the physics of energy dispersal to claims about social decay, moral decline, or the entropy of civilization as metaphor, not mechanics, can mislead a presented as physical law. The most defensible life philosophy in this way treats entropy as a powerful organizing image and a real constraint on living systems, while being honest that the leap to values, meaning, and how one ought to live is a philosophical move, not a deduction from thermodynamics. Held together, the picture many people find compelling is this: the universe trends toward dispersal. Life is a remarkable self-funding eddy of order within that flow. Consciousness lets that eddy know itself and choose what order to build, and a life well lived is, in part, the deliberate creation of pattern, connection, and meaning, and full awareness that the gradient will eventually win. Self-funding eddy of order within that flow. Consciousness lets that eddy flow know itself and choose what order to build, and a life well lived is in part the deliberate creation of pattern, connection, meaning, and full awareness. The gradient will eventually win. Whether one responds to that with acceptance or with the drive to extend and transcend is where the philosophy rather than the physics takes over. root is Panchatantra. Panchatantra. Then we have the Indian branch. Why can I zoom more? Hitopadesha. Parallels and shared motives with Jatakas. Then we have Pahlavi Middle Persian. We have Kalila Vardima, Arabic, masterpiece of Arabic prose. We have Syriac. We have Hebrew, Greek. We have Persian versions. Lights of Canopus, Turkish, Humayunama. Turkish is Humayunama, okay. Munshi, Nasrallah Munshi, Anwar. Through that we have Latin, Directorium Humanae Vitae, European branch mostly, German, Book der Beispiele, Italian, Doni, Spanish, Kalila Edima, English, Fables of Moral Philosophy of Doni, Jean de la Fontaine Fables, Jean de la Fontaine, European branch. 1001 Nights, Frame Narrative Technique, some inspiration. European folktales, nursery rhymes, ballads, partial claims, 10% European folktales. Broader creative ripples, Canterbury Tales, modern Kipling, Rikki Tikki Tavi, comics, animations, Amar Chitra Katha, Southeast Asia, Tantri, very cool. Visual genealogy, textual tree. What is Mermaid.live? Copy and paste. Wow. This is cool. Jean de la Fontaine. Very cool. Okay, on the Unified Collective Power Cinematic Experience, the most amazing thing for me is that every single person who sees a movie, not necessarily one of my movies, brings a whole set of viewing experiences. Now, through careful manipulation and good storytelling, you can get everybody to clap at the same time, to hopefully laugh at the same time, and to be afraid at the same time. The most amazing thing for me is that every single person who sees a movie, not necessarily one of my movies, brings a whole set of unique experiences. Now, through careful manipulation and good storytelling, you can get everybody to clap at the same time, to hopefully laugh at the same time, and be afraid at the same time. On the magic inherent in any movie watching experience, every time I go to a movie, it's magic, no matter what the movie's about. Can you create a image diffusion thing where with every sentence, with every word, it's a prompt to randomly generate an image? I don't know if this makes sense, but let's see. Every time I go to a movie, it's magic, no matter what the movie's about. The older I get, the more I look at movies as a moving miracle. Audiences are harder to please if you are just giving them special effects, but they are easy to please if it's a good story. On the communal theater experience as essential. Motion picture experience requires an audience to be the accelerant of that experience, to be the contagion of making the experience even more profound for the individual in that crowded theater. Popular art, like his films, bonds people despite differences. Bonds people despite differences. On audience immersion real-time experience, tracking action without cutting is the least jarring method of placing the audience into a real-time experience. Tracking action without cutting is the least jarring method of placing the audience into a real-time experience where they are the ones making the subtle choices of where and when to look. Filmmaking is truly the greatest art form ever invented, superior in its immersive power to things like cave paintings. The explorer discovered an ancient glowing city floating in the clouds. The explorer discovered ancient city, glowing city, floating in the clouds. Wow. Okay, really cool. Prompt. Okay, it'd be cool to kind of give a prompt like this. Yeah, things that I have said. Let's see. Let's see. Really cool. Wow. Wow. Crack open the heart. It's both a flower and a stone.